everyone, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Ali.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are going all US for you guys today because this is one of the few opportunities we get to talk everything NWSL. You've been calling out for it, and here we are. We are going to talk about our game of the week, which is Racing versus Utah, the game that had everything that no one expected after all of those weather delays that happened. We're going to talk about why Racing are doing so fantastic, and are Utah as bad as their stats make out? You have to continue to listen to find out. We then, as ever, will take you around the world talking about international. We're going to go sneak that in a little bit. The final international games happened last week and what that means for qualifications. And then we have a wonderful interview with Lesley, Ryder of Galpow Sports, talking all things Chicago. Chicago fans, I know you want to talk about what is going so wrong with you guys, and Lesley provides wonderful insight into that. And then finally some bits and pieces of the NWSL, some talking points. We all know we want to talk about the Gotham saga of it all. And as we have promised, we will be talking San Diego. What is going so right for you guys after such a dismal season last season? So it's all NWSL all the time here today.
But before we get into all things NWSL, we promised that we would have information regarding our Euros coverage, and we have it. We keep our promises when we remember them. We keep our promises. We've got amazing Euros coverage coming down the pipe for you. In fact, this is our last regular Wednesday episode until after Euros. So after today, it'll be all Euros coverage all the time. Ali, tell them what we got.
So we're going to start off by talking about all of the groups. Yes, you love our predictions, so we're going to give you the 411 about the groups and what we think is going to happen. And then, to add into everything, there will be an extra predictions episode once we have covered all of the groups, so you can see if we've changed our minds after all of the information.
So that's going to be dropping Monday, Thursday. All of our drops during the Euros are going to be 2 times a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Mark it all on your calendar. So starting next week, Monday, Group A preview will be dropping Thursday. Group B preview will be dropping the following week. Monday, Thursday, Group C and D. And then the following Monday will be the last Monday before the Euros kick off. We'll drop our predictions episode that Monday. And then that Thursday, that'll be Thursday, July 3rd. And guess what? That'll be day 2 of Euros, baby. And we're going to have it all for you.
So back to the NWSL. Before we get into the game of it all, we have to talk about the new drop that happened last Saturday, which is the ever-evolving situation that is the Boston Legacy, have revealed their new crest. And we will link it onto our socials. And for those that haven't seen it, it caused many an opinion, and the overall feeling was meh. It was just meh.
I like it, actually.
I have to say, if you aren't from Boston and you don't understand, apparently swans are a big thing in Boston. That was my question. I was like, why is it a swan? Apparently that's a big thing in Boston, both in the zoo and in the parks and the swan boats, according to Tim. So apparently that was a thing. It's fine.
I like it. I think that they can do a lot with this swan. I think that the merch out of this, my mind always goes to, what is the merch going to look like? And I think that the merch off of this is going to be pretty slick. I really like it. You said it's a swan. I also did not know it's a Boston icon. Apparently it is. But it seems to have resonated, at least from the comment section. It seems that Bostonians are really digging it.
Well, that's all that matters.
The last part of the crest that I really, really loved, because obviously when all these teams post their new crest, they like explain different features of it. And this explanation I really loved because it's a swan and there are 8 different wings, and it was 8 different feathers, and it was 8 feathers on the wing in honor of the 8 original clubs that were established in the first year of the NWSL in 2013. And I thought that was a nice little paying homage, especially because Boston had a team in the original, and not the old, well, I guess where it's all the same NWSL, but a long time ago. So I really liked it.
To our game of the week, and as I hinted, it was Racing Louisville versus Utah. This game looked like it was not going to go ahead because there was multiple weather delays before they finally did. And normally, weather delay games aren't the greatest because players have been so up and down, they've been prepped and then they've had to sit back down. This game was not that.
It certainly wasn't. I mean, it got off to a crazy start, even like you said, right from the jump, Allie. Mozingo scored for Utah, capitalized in the 3rd minute to kick it all off. Emma Sears then equalized in the 9th minute. And it was first 10 minutes of utter chaos, and we were off to the races. Emma Sears' goal in that 9th minute is, for me, without a doubt, best goal of the season, and I don't really see how anybody's gonna beat it. I watched that on TikTok like 10 times in a row, and I had to like force myself to scroll away because I just wanted to see it from every angle. It was the most picture perfect. I was like heart eyes drooling over it, Allie. Stunning goal. And if you haven't seen it, push pause, go watch it, come back, because my goodness, Emma Sears. What a revelation she has been, not just on racing, but also on the U.S. women's national team.
So we have to say we are loving the green kits. They were a bit controversial when they launched, but they're looking good.
We did a fits and kits, and Chris was very anti-green kit for Racing Louisville. I personally am a huge fan. They were looking good.
And I sit in the middle, but they're not as bad as I thought they were going to be. So.
Okay, good. I forgot your opinion on everything in that episode was like, I really don't care or like this.
Yeah, basically. So, speaking of the team, let's talk about Racing Louisville, because the last few games, they've really sorted themselves out. They're now 6th, having won 4 of the last 5. Their only loss is 1-0 to Seattle, and that was a super close game. They beat Angel City 3-2. They beat Gotham 1-0. They beat Houston 1-0. So they're doing all right. And then they won this game 3-2. So what is it about Racing that they've managed to find their form at last?
I think they certainly have found their form. Not just their form. I think Racing Louisville are starting to form an identity on the field. And it's not only great to see after this many years, it's a really fun team to watch. That's part of their identity. This is a team that came into the league in 2021. They were coming in the year before Angel City and San Diego, and they were completely overshadowed by those two teams. And it's been a rough ride. And I feel like we've many years thought the next year will be the one for Racing. The next year will be the one for Racing. And it's such a strong soccer town in Louisville and really dedicated supporters and fans, wonderful fans that want to see this team succeed and support this team through and through. And we've known what it could be. And now, yeah, they're finally starting to form an identity on the field. It is incredible to watch. You asked how they found their form. I think it's a lot of things, but you look across the field at who this team has. Ellie Jean came in this year from Gotham FC, and she's playing in the center back role. She played kind of everywhere for Gotham, and it's taken her a moment to settle in, but she's now settling in to Racing. She scored her first goal for them. She's looking more comfortable. Savannah DeMello has fully come into her form as the centerpiece of this offense. Everything goes through her. She's so creative on the ball. You add an element of Emma Sears then, who is just kicking butt. 6 goals across the season so far. She's tied for 4th for the most goals in the season so far with Ashley Hatch and Riley Tiernan. The only reason she's not on that like golden boot list is because she doesn't have any assists, but she still got 6 goals. You add Janine Sonis, so formerly known as Janine Becky, to this, and you get kind of like a veteran presence coming in, and it just kind of feels like a couple of missing pieces from last year have slotted in. They're finally comfortable in their role at Racing, and it's, no pun intended, off to the races.
Racing do have 2 very tough challenges coming up ahead, though, because their next games are against KC Current away and then at home to Orlando Pride. So I think those games are going to be a huge testament to see how far they've actually grown, because the teams they've beat are the teams that have been in and around them or below them. So it'll be interesting to see how they come up against those 2 powerhouses. But I'm excited. I'm excited for Racing because, as you said, they've always been the team that almost The pieces were there, but they weren't put together. They hadn't gelled. They hadn't slotted together. And we're starting to see it now. And so they're an exciting team to watch. As a neutral, they're a very exciting team to watch. So let's look at Utah for a moment, because they're currently second to last, but only on goal difference. They have the same amount of points, same amount of wins and losses as Chicago, who we will get on to later on in this episode. They've lost the last 4 of the 5, then that includes a draw. However, their gameplay is not as bad as their results make out. Like, they are scoring, they are doing bits, but they're just losing it at the last hurdle. Their defense isn't holding out. They haven't been able to put those final pieces in the final third. So is that fair to say that Utah aren't as dire as their results make them seem at?
I think so. I think what you said is totally accurate. Their results are not impressive. They lost 4 out of the last 5 games, and the one that they didn't was a draw. But they really, when you watch them play, those losses and that draw, the draw was versus Washington Spirit. And I think in that game, they proved that they can hang with any team. They drew Washington Spirit, one of the best teams in the league. And you look at some of these losses, and I mean, we can take this game. They were in it. They just need to be able to put a complete game together. They have moments of brilliance, and then they collapse again. They were exceptionally competitive in this game, and arguably, if Ana Tejada had not gotten that second yellow card and forced Utah to play the remaining minutes of the game with 10 players, this game may have ended in either a draw or possibly a win for Utah. They were the better team, the more dominant team in the second half until that red card, and even after the red card, honestly, which was a second yellow, but still a red card. Utah were able to find some opportunities. So it's been breaks like that, I feel, that lead to these losses, and the performances themselves have actually been relatively strong. All in all, this was a blast of a game. And I'm so happy, Allie, that on our episode where we decided to go full NWSL, the game of the week we felt like worth highlighting was Utah and Racing Louisville, because it was truly exceptional. Goals galore, 4 goals in the first half, everybody, and a red card and a last minute winner. Like, how much better does it get? And then the gameplay itself, it was up and down. It was transitional. It was back and forth. It was like pure NWSL in the best way. It was great. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world. International edition.
Germany hammered Austria this week 6-0 to win Group A in Nations League. The Netherlands could only manage a draw against Scotland, which meant they went second.
On to Group 2. France did the clean sweep on their group in Nations League, winning 6 out of 6. Norway squeezed a 1-0 win to go second in their group.
Group 3, and Spain beat England to go straight through in Group 3. Belgium, however, beat Portugal to keep their third place.
And finally, Group 4 of Nations League, League A, Sweden demolished Denmark 6-1 to stay atop their group. Italy go second after their win against Wales. We are joined by the wonderful Lesley Ryder from Gal Pal Sports, based in Chicago. She wrote a great article for the Equalizer recently, diving into the entirety of Chicago, past, present, and possible future. And I slid into her DMs not a week ago saying, hey, let's chat Chicago. And Lesley, thank you so much for coming on just off of a little DM like that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Literally anytime.
I relate to it's hard when somebody's like, hey, would you want to maybe like talk about this thing that you've so much to say about? And you're like, yeah, I can totally make time for that. But it's always a pleasure. I feel like we've mainly gotten to chat in person, and this is actually the first time we're doing a virtual chat. And we are here, as I said, to chat all things Chicago Stars FC, formerly the Chicago Red Stars, for the purposes of the next however many minutes. We're not going to correct ourselves. We're just going to call them what we call them. All right, so let's start with the article that you wrote about Chicago for the Equalizer, because you dove into a lot. And when it all kind of started off with saying this ownership group bought this team before the previous season, before 2024 season. And we've got this rebrand, but it doesn't seem like the on the field rebrand has really followed. They've got a ton of money, but they don't seem to be investing in Chicago. The question you ask at the beginning of the article, I'm just going to ask back to you right here, which is, are fans just not being patient enough, or is there something wrong with the rebrand on the field?
I'm gonna say there's something wrong with the rebrand. It's when the new ownership group arrived, it was like players described it as like a weight being lifted off their shoulders. I mean, I think there was a lot of excitement. There were a lot of hopes and expectations for what a new ownership group would bring to a team where, money was previously not really spent around the club anywhere, facilities on or off the field. And so I think, especially with how they performed last season, where they may have overperformed in a few spots, but they still managed to make to the playoffs. So I think the reasonable expectation would be, okay, let's make a few more improvements and see how we can do even better. And when you start off a season the way this team has, I mean, we're almost halfway through, and they have one win. It's not great. We are not living in a happy time for Chicago fans.
Yeah, it seems like it's a far cry from the years where it was like Chicago's always the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And now I always felt bad for Chicago. And now it's like, I feel like Chicago fans long for those moments where they were so close to the championship, but just not quite there. But there was like a mass exodus along a few years ago. I feel like Allie and I both want to get into the coaching situation, but let's talk on the field quickly, because I'm kind of probably stealing Allie's question.
You are, but it's fine.
Go for it. You go for it. For it. Because you made the prediction before this season happened. You looked at Chicago and you were like, this is a no bueno situation right now.
Yeah. So when we did our big predictions episode, I did say it was going to be a rough season for Chicago. I didn't think it was going to be this rough for Chicago. Can you even pinpoint what is going on? Why is it just failing so badly?
I think there's one good thing I can say about Chicago, and it's that they didn't have that same exodus in the offseason that they'd had in the previous 2 years, where first they lost their entire midfield and then they lost their back line. I think the problem is they haven't really done anything to replace those players. Right now, it's a lot of trying to work with young talent, people who are in their first, second, third year, and trying to replace you can't really replace Casey Kruger and Tierna Davidson by not bringing in more veteran players. And what I learned over the couple of interviews that I had with Richard Foyts is that they're just not spending money. And they are not really intending to spend money, which is, it just kind of goes against everything. You have this entire movement that's like, invest in women's sports, and it doesn't stop after you buy the team. You have to keep investing in that team to, the on-field play is your product, and you need to make that product better so that you can attract more people. Right now, you're asking people to schlep out to the Chicago suburbs an hour in the car for what? And you look at the teams that are better in the top of the table now, the Kansas Cities, the Orlandos, the Washingtons. These are all teams that were at or near the bottom of the table in the last few years. And what did their owners do? They spent money. What did Michelle Kang do? She spent a lot of money. And right now, it looks like Chicago's not interested in doing that. And it seems that it is their plan to try to become a better team by relying on free transfers. And I think, especially with how free agency is evolving in the NWSL, I don't know that they're not necessarily going to be able to rely on those for a long time, because it's the same in the global game. You have people who want those players and are willing to pay for them. And if you wait around, you're going to miss out. And right now, Chicago's missing out.
Yeah, big time. I feel like you hit on so many different, like,
yeah, that was a lot.
no, in like a really good way, because it all ties together. Because I mean, I do want to ask you about, like, almost which level is responsible, but I feel like what you're saying about money, especially now without the draft, we knew that taking away the draft would almost be, the draft was the great equalizer. And when you take it away, we knew that the teams that would shine would be the ones that were willing to invest in not just players, but facilities, training, in every type of support you can provide to an athlete. And at the end of the day, we don't need to dig too far to see which teams at the end of the day are really investing in those types of behind the scenes benefits for players, because it's the teams that are getting the players, and it's literally that simple. And then you add in the international game, which you just mentioned, and you talk about how much these certain teams can pay. How much did Naomi Girma go to Chelsea for? And I guess, it really all does come down to money. So in speaking with Chicago, and if you don't feel comfortable like really placing blame, that's fine. But I feel like there's levels to this where it's like, listen, sometimes the players aren't gelling. Sometimes it's the coach and the tactics. Sometimes the GM isn't going out and getting the right players. And sometimes the ownership is just kind of putting a roadblock in front of everybody. It sounds like to me you're saying at this point, the ownership is just putting a huge roadblock in front of the GM, in front of everybody, because there's only so much you can do if the owners won't go out and spend money.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's definitely an upstream problem. Like, I think the players are doing the best they can with what they have. I think they're a really tight group, and that's something that you want to see in a team that's in this situation, because the last thing you want after that is a group of people who can't stand each other. I think my issue with GM Richard Foyts is that he seems to be 100% on board with this plan, this direction. He comes at it with a very CEO mindset of, maximizing and all that boardroom, whatever that comes out of a person's mouth when they're in that kind of space. I think this is likely just something that comes from on high with the ownership group and how they want to operate the team. I think it's like, I'm not quite sure how it necessarily works with like President Karen Leetso, because like she is very like hands off when it comes to the on-field stuff. Like when I ask her about, she's like, no, I don't want to tell him what to do with his job, like that kind of thing. I mean, I kind of got the impression that Lauren Donaldson and Richard were not on the same page with how they wanted to do things. Lauren was continually saying, like, we're going to get some new players. I think we're going to get some new players and make some changes and just be able to work things out that way. And, day one of the season came, and I think everyone saw the off season, and that's where we're at now.
Yeah. I see you about to talk, Ellie.
I am. That was a great segue, because we want to talk about the Lauren Donaldson of it all. Because as a passive viewer of Chicago, I was surprised he was let go when he was. As a fan of Chicago, were you surprised, or did you think the time has come, this is about right?
I think when you look at results and whatnot for a season, you could reason it out that, like, you go, okay, this team hasn't won a game, they're struggling, let's get a new manager. But if you kind of zoom out a bit of like, this is a rebuild, this is meant to be a rebuild, you want a manager who's in it for a couple of seasons to help put things together and help create that new culture and create that new on-field style. And I don't think he was equipped to necessarily do what he wanted to do. GM Richard Foyts is inclined to disagree, but I think we all saw what happened in the offseason. We saw one veteran player brought in and a whole bunch of rookies. And it's just not a recipe for building on what they were able to do last season. Because it's like last season they did all right. They managed to eke out some wins that they kind of did a smash and grab on. And you want to be able to build on that, and it just didn't happen. And I don't put that on Lord Donaldson, because it's like it's not his job to go out and get the players. It's his job to make the on-field product work.
Such a eloquent way of saying what I said a few weeks ago, which was, I'm going to say this for me, not for Lesley. I'm saying this for me. Lauren Donaldson was absolutely the scapegoat in this situation. I mean, Chicago has lost 3 and tied 2 in their last 5. It doesn't seem like much has changed since the coaching change. And I think the proof is in the pudding right there. But that was not an eloquent way of saying that. That was a super direct way of saying that. I feel like there's so much negative, unfortunately, to talk about with Chicago.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're in last place.
That's what happens when you got 5 points. Yeah.
But more so than Utah. I don't know. Yeah. There seems to be more negativity coming out of Chicago, because Utah are on exactly the same amount of points as you guys.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that too. I feel like you look at the results from Utah. We're talking about racing and Utah in this episode. That game easily could have gone to Utah. And I feel like that's some of the results for Utah, very similar to maybe last year for Chicago. But Chicago ended up doing a smash and grab and getting some of those points, and the results looked better than maybe they were. Utah's almost the exact opposite, in my opinion, right now, where their results aren't actually showing how well they are playing and how well they are competing against these teams.
Yeah, that game was bonkers. That was not
crazy.
What I would expect from a game that's like coming off of a multi-hour weather delay. It was right. Okay, we're coming out, we're fighting. I love it.
Nobody's asleep right now after that waiting. We're all ready to go.
Yeah, I think Utah still has some work to do. Like I think they have similar struggles as Chicago of how are we going to put this ball in the back of the net? And I don't know. I'm like Utah gives me slightly more hope, just because like they have the Ali Sentner of it all, where it's just like you can see hope, glimpses of hope.
Totally. What morsel can you give them that is, if any, a positive morsel to grasp onto? Maybe not even for this seain. Maybe for looking forward.
We do have a transfer coming in over the summer. We don't know who it is yet. They have international slots available, so like it could be in that realm. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard when you're the last place team. Like how are you supposed to be like, hey, free agents, come over here. Our team is in last place. We have no permanent head coach. Yeah. We practice in a city facility that is, we have the main priority over it. But you live in Chicago, but you have to work in the suburbs. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's funny because on a high level, Chicago feels like it would be one of the most appealing places to go. I mean, we just mentioned Utah. I would imagine from a bird's eye view, even coming from from England, like Allie, if you have the option to go to Chicago or Utah and you don't know much about it, I think you'd probably choose the major city, especially knowing the political climate, etc.
Yeah. The one thing we have going for us.
Yeah, it might be a big one though. I want to ask you quickly about stadiums, because I feel like we talk a lot about this on this podcast as well, specifically because I was in New York for such a very long time. And for a very long time, I slowly saw all of my friends who mostly identify in the LGBTQIA community migrate from having season tickets at Gotham FC, which is in a stadium in New Jersey, to immediately buying season tickets in Brooklyn for the Liberty. Different sports, the Liberty play basketball, but one of them was located in the city and was easy to get to and was kind of centered around where most of that queer community lived. And one of them isn't. And that seems to be, I think, somewhat of a trend now in San Francisco too. Bay FC play all the way down the peninsula in San Jose, which is a great city, but it is a suburb, and in traffic, it can take up to 2 hours to get there from the city. The Valkyries are brand new and they play literally within the city itself. And we talk about investment, and not every team has the capability to, buy and build their own stadium, but there are levels, and there's a lot of levels between, as you said, playing in a city facility, and building your own stadium. And I think Chicago and North Carolina are like the two remaining teams that still play in the stadium that they played in 10 years ago. And everybody else has migrated to a kind of bigger and better, for lack of a better term. How much of a role do you feel like that is playing in the Chicago Stars as a whole? And I guess from your boots on the ground perspective, does it impact fandom in Chicago and among the community there?
I mean, anyone who's seen a Chicago game has seen how empty that stadium is on game day. Like the announced attendance will be like somewhere around like 3,300, and the actual turnstile attendance is much, much lower than that, low enough that I can count by hand how many people are in the stands. So being in the city is it's a big priority for them, but they much like trying to build their on-field team, I think they are trying to spend as little money on it as possible. It's they lobbied hard for the like equality in sports funding amendment that is going to JB Pritzker's desk. It's a bill that is in the lens of like, yeah, women's equality. How the billions and billions of dollars have gone to men's sports to build stadiums, but these are billions and billions of dollars that should have never gone to them in the first place. And people are very much realizing that and not inclined to want to spend their tax dollars on a stadium. Like, if even like the Kansas City Chiefs can't get a stadium passed like the year they win a Super Bowl, no one's getting it. That's just the way that public perception has gone. And so I think they really want to tap into tax money. I don't think they'll be successful. The Bears and the White Sox have all tried to do their own stadium deals, and the governor's been like, no, absolutely not. We have right now we're dealing with like the CTA, the subway company here is dealing with a funding crisis. No one wants to see that money being spent on a stadium. But on the other hand, the Chicago Fire just unveiled this really cool stadium right in the heart of downtown that they're self-funding. So it's just the way that things are going to go now. If you want that stadium, build it yourself, fund it yourself. You have funds, you have rich friends, like figure it out. You guys, this is a rich person problem. I am a poor person. I cannot relate to you on that sense, but figure it out.
Allie, anything else?
All of these like queries and conversations you're having such hits home as a West Ham fan. This all sounds so familiar as a West Ham fan about the fact that we play out in the sticks, not actually London. It's, the suburbs of London, and trying to get people out there. You said yourself, announced attendance. We are announced attendance is 2,000. And again, I can see maybe 500 people there. They're counting season ticket holders that haven't turned up and VIPs that haven't turned up in their attendance. And it's like, what can you do? Because if the performance isn't there, and again, I say that as a West Ham fan who up until last season, on the dregs of relegation season after season, what can you do? And I want to ask about very quickly, because I feels for me with Chicago, there was a lot of building around Mal Swanson. And then Mal Swanson isn't figuring this season. We now know why. For a long time we didn't know, but we now know why she's not figuring. Is that a huge thing? Because I know over here in England, if your team has got a star name, you're more likely to get bums on seats.
Yeah, I mean, I think it matters more on the score sheet than necessarily with butts and seats. I think like she has that capability of scoring that, that odd goal that would end up making a difference in a tie game or when you're down by one. So I think they're definitely feeling her absence in that sense. But even with Mal Swanson, I don't think I don't think she could salvage this team. Because she dealt with a lot of this last season, especially down the stretch after the Olympics. I don't think she scored a goal after the gold medal match, which should have been a writing on the wall moment for the front office to be like, okay, how do we get that player who can take that ball and give it to Mel Swanson? Should have been priority number one, but.
Yeah. Or how do we get that player that can deter from Mel Swanson so not everybody's focused on Mel Swanson, so maybe Mel Swanson can score.
Yeah, and it's like they did kind of have a thing going with Mel Swanson and Ludmilla and Janice Joseph. Like they were kind of starting to figure some stuff out, but to make that work, you definitely need a trio of players who can be a threat. And right now they don't have that.
I feel like I keep trying to find some positive.
Story of my life, man.
A couple games left before the NWSL breaks for July and all of it. It'll be Chicago against Seattle and then Chicago against Portland. Seattle will be this coming Saturday. What are you expecting from this game, Lesley? And what are you hoping? Who are you most watching?
Well, this game is going to be interesting because this one is their doubleheader with the Chicago Fire. So it's at Soldier Field, which is not quite downtown, like still a little bit like off the beaten path. But
for those who don't know, Soldier Field is where the Chicago Bears play, right?
Yes, the Bears and the Fire play there. Yeah. So it is
massive, like 60,000 person stadium.
Yeah, big stadium. I think the last I heard, the Stars were at like maybe 20,000 tickets, which is more than they get now. So
yeah,
there's a positive. People are going to come to this game, and so.
Hey, the Wrigley game was great too.
That was a great game. If only they would have won. That was a really nice moment, and I'm excited for the San Francisco Oracle Park. That's going to be a banger. And I hope Penelope Hawking scores because that'll just be a lovely poetic.
I also do.
Lovely poetic bookend for her.
It really would be. Yeah, it really would be. We're all Penelope Hawking fans. It's hard
not.
We really
are. Yeah. We really are. It's so stupid. Like I love that she has gone off and scored in every single game or just some sort of contribution since that article came out because. Richard Foyt's had a clever little quote where he said that she hadn't started all season, and they had gotten a large sum for her, so he was feeling very good about himself in that moment, and then she's gone off, and to that I say good for her.
Yeah. 100%. Chicago had always found those like low-key players who could perform in massive situations. And I was shocked when they let her go, to be honest, because there was a lot of potential there. And I think we're just seeing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You miss out when you goof.
I'm totally taking us on another little side trail here, but I have to ask, how do you feel about these one-off games being played in larger stadiums? It's obviously not a long-term solution, but maybe in some ways it could be somewhat of a long-term solution where Chicago Stars don't have to change their stadium. They can play 2 games at a different stadium, maybe at Wrigley or at Soldier Field, maybe then 3 the following year. How do you feel about these? And do you feel like it's making a positive impact in the long term?
I mean, I think surely it's got to mean something. That's where I go to this, where it's like, if you can bring 34,000 people out to a Chicago Red Stars game at Wrigley Field, like that feels like a win for the future of the club, where you get that hope of like, okay, so maybe if this team were closer to the city and, perhaps accessible by rail, bus, train, whatever, maybe people will come see it. I think they have to figure out what they're going to do next season. Their lease is up at the end of the year, so I'm not sure how much they're willing to stay at SeatGeek, but right now there aren't a lot of viable options for them out of there. They're playing a game at Northwestern's temporary football stadium, which is cool. It's a cool location. It's right on the lake. It's picturesque. But it's also like super windy and an own goal waiting to happen off a goal kick. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, I could sadly see that happening to Chicago.
But it's also like there are a lot of teams that use that field. So
Yeah.
it just goes from like one situation where you're not the primary tenant to another. And it's also north of the city and a bit out of the way for more people. So it is, I have no clue where they're going to play next season, and it is going to be an interesting story to watch.
Lesley, thank you so much. For those of you listening who do not know Lesley, you need to go follow her and Gal Pal Sports on socials. Lesley, do you want to give those a shout?
Yes, we are at Gal Pal Sports across pretty much all the social media platforms. We don't go on Twitter anymore just because it's
Why
sad.
not?
It's it's just I heard it's weird. I heard it's weird over there.
I don't know what you mean.
Then I think I'm just Lesley Ryder on the Blue Sky. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Sweet. Lesley, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So to the bits and bobs and bats of the NWSL, we have to talk about the controversy of it all, the Gotham versus KC current chaos. I said in my intro, I'm surprised that the ref made it out alive, because that was an interesting game, shall we say.
This was, sadly, we do have to talk less about the game and more about the controversy, but a moment on the game, Allie, because this one almost got out of control real fast for Gotham.
Yes.
It really, for a moment, looked like it was on the verge of being an utter blowout in the favor of Kansas City. Like, they looked like they were about to roll over Gotham, and really good on Gotham FC for pulling it together, turning it around, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of Gotham fans might argue that it should have been 3-2 Gotham. We'll just sit here and say instead, maybe we're all wondering why it wasn't 2-2 Gotham. Or it ended 2-1 Kansas City. Let's just say that. Gotham FC had 2 goals called back and 1 potential non-call on a handball in the box that could have been, perhaps should have been, according to some, a penalty kick. Now, I can't remember if the Sonnet one was reviewed by VAR. I know both of Esther's were reviewed by VAR and determined that
And
it was...
Sonnet's was too, because
Sonnet's
Sonnet thought she'd got it, and then it got called back real late.
So for those of you who didn't watch, we'll try to describe, or you can hit pause and go watch, but I don't think you need too much context here. The first goal that was called back was Emily Sonnet, and she scored off of a corner kick, a beautiful header right into the net. It was probably needed because Sonnet almost essentially gave away one of the goals as well, so it was kind of like her neutralizing everything. But it got called back because they called it Sonnet shoved the defender, the Kansas City defender, in the back in order to free herself up. So it was a foul against Emily Sonnet at the end of the day, instead of a goal for Gotham and Emily Sonnet. Listen, corner kicks get really messy, physical, shovey. Some refs like to referee the physicality more than others. What did you feel about this?
I personally thought it was just part and parcel of a corner. Like, I have been a defender that's defended corners like that, and you do get elbows, it looked like the player just lost her footing. I didn't think there was anything in it. I thought the goal should have stood. The fact that it took so long when you look at the VAR check, it was very, very little in it, if I'm honest. So I personally would have given that goal, but I can see why the video refs pulled it back.
This is just I'll just say it. Here's my thing about all of these. I honestly felt like every single call could have gone either way. Like, when we go through these, I think, at least for me, you tell me how you feel, but I feel like I could see the case for it going either way. Like you just said in this one, part of me is like, hey, such is the game, and we've all been on both ends of that. And part of me is like, yeah, she shoved her in the back. Like, it's pretty clear as day. That was a shove in the back. So I think we aren't talking about this on the pod if Gotham weren't on the wrong side of all 3 decisions. That's why Gotham fans are so pissed, because it did feel like at the end of the day, watching that game, it felt like things were taken away from Gotham because they were on that side of everything. But even if we can see both sides of everything, we're still going to talk about the other 2, because the other 2 both involve Esther Gonzalez, the legend that she is. I can't remember which one happened first, if it was the handball. I think it was the handball that happened first. So let's talk about the handball, Allie. Bouncing ball in the box. Esther looks like she's about to create the space for herself to put it away. Casey ends up clearing it out. In VAR, it very clearly hits the defender's arm and redirects. And it is not given as a penalty kick. I think this is the one that I'm most partial to say that should have been given.
100%.
Yeah.
Because the defender's arm was not in a natural position and it redirects the ball.
I kind of feel like it was in a natural position.
Then it can't be given. Then that's the thing. It's got to be in a natural, because even if it redirects...
It was down. It wasn't glued to her side, but it was down. There was a little space in between her arm and her body, but it wasn't like it was up in the air. It wasn't, like perpendicular to her body. It was as low as it could be in that moment. But it truly did impact the play. This is why I'm such a bad referee. I really feel like everything is so arbitrary. I'm like, what rule book? What seems fair in this moment?
See, I think it's funny that you said that this is the one that you think they're the most hard done by. Because I think it's the goal. I think it's the goal callback.
You think it's Esther's goal?
Yeah, Esther's goal is the one they're the most hard done by, because, as you said to me, what even is offside anymore?
Oh, yeah, right.
so basically, if you didn't say it, again, it's coming from a corner.
I think I just laughed at my own text that I sent to you, that you just sent it back to me. But it's true. I'm like, I totally agree with me.
So the ball gets played off this corner. It gets cycled over to Esther, who then scores. But again, it's pulled back because they're saying she's offside. But she wasn't offside when she scored. She was offside when they kicked the ball from the corner. But if she's not in the initial play, then it doesn't matter that she's offside.
Here's what happens. When the ball gets played into the box, Esther was in an offside position.
Correct.
She then moved into an onside position, but when the defender cleared the ball to her, she had moved from offside to onside. But when the defender touched the ball to clear it to her, she was onside, and then she put it away. So it's like, well, what is offside, guys? She was in offside position when the ball was played into the box by her teammate, but she was in an onside position when the defender essentially played her the ball out. So which one matters? I went to the FA website to read about offside, and I can't even tell you, it's pages and pages just about the offside rule, contingencies, section 1B part 3A 2 dash whatever. And I was like, oh my Lord, I can't do this. At the end of the day, this has turned into American football definition of what is a catch. Nobody knows what a catch is anymore. Nobody knows what offside is anymore either. I don't know. And I will say, I do really feel for the referee, because those were 3 really tough moments to ref. And I think, I'm going to guess, if we ask Kansas City fans, they'd probably make a really good case for how that was actually the right call 3 times in a row. And I'm sure Gotham fan could make the case for how that was the wrong call 3 times in a row. And both sides would make sense to me. So I don't know. It was really chaotic and unclear, but made for a lot of drama.
And then finally, San Diego Wave. Now, this is a team that has been so confusing. So we said that we were going to talk about it, and we will go more in depth probably after the Euros. But for now, we have to talk about it because they started off really sketchy. They had a really rough season last season.
Well, I wouldn't say really rough. It wasn't really rough.
It was, with the whole controversy of losing their manager, and then it
yeah. It was a lot of turmoil for sure. They still finished pretty well, but yeah.
Yeah, and then they had an interesting interim manager. We won't talk about him. And then they've now got Jonas Edeval, which again caused a lot of controversy. Everybody was very confused by why he got chosen. And it started off a bit rocky, but they've really pulled it off, and they've really pulled it together. And they've made some interesting signings, and they seem to be working it all out.
Couldn't agree more. They've been truly such a fascinating case study this year, Allie, haven't they?
For sure. So they're fourth because they lost this weekend, but they're only 2 points behind second and third, which is Orlando and Washington, and they are 7 points behind the KC Current at the moment. But they've got 6 wins to their name, which nobody thought was going to happen. You know, Idevol got Manager of the Month for May. So, yeah, they are an enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a puzzle.
6 wins is how many they got in the entirety of 2024, for the record. Their record at the end of the 2024 season was 6 wins, 7 draws, and 13 losses. And they are sitting at, I'm not looking at it, but you said 6 wins. So they've already equalized that. 2 draws, 3 losses is their record. I can't say I had high hopes when Jonas Idevol was hired at San Diego, just simply because I watch a lot of Arsenal and I wasn't the biggest fan. But I think what we maybe can say and have learned here is that different coaches and their tactics might lend themselves a lot better to certain leagues. And I think that the style that Jonas Idevol likes to play lends itself really well, not just to the NWSL, but also to the players who play in the NWSL, who are ready to play that transitional style. And I think a lot of the broadcasters have said, you know, like he's bringing a more European style to the NWSL. I wouldn't go that far. I would say he's mixing some possession into a transitional league, but I would still say that San Diego Wave are not playing in the same form as a Chelsea, as an Arsenal, as, you know, I don't know, even a Barcelona, a team that really loves to have possession. They're not playing in that, as a Manchester City, you know, they're not playing like that. But I do think that the mix that they have found and the balance that they've found between the slow buildup and the quick transition has worked really, really well. This is a league where it would work well.
So we've talked about Idevol a lot in this. Let's talk about the players, because they signed some WSL players, mainly from Villa. So we've seen Dali and Leon. And I will honestly say, the last few games, we've seen Leon of old. This is the Leon that's been smashing it for Canada, because when they played North Carolina Courage, they won that game 5-2, and Leon got 2 of the goals, and they were quite phenomenal. So yeah, so the player mix of San Diego has become an interesting combination.
Totally. Funny, we talked about Kenza Dali, who was just left off of the France roster. Shout out to our Euros coverage, which will be starting next Monday. And we will talk about all of the things like that for each of the teams in their groups. Back to the NWSL. We talked about this mix of like European and NWSL styles that San Diego seems to have found. And I think you actually just see that in their personnel as well. You have players like Kenza Dali, who we just mentioned. And then you have Cascarino. You mentioned Leon, who's who plays international football for Canada, but has spent a lot of time playing in Europe as well. And it's mixing all of these different styles of play from these different players, and the style that San Diego is playing. This is the puzzle piece that you're always trying to fit together, right? Can I have a team play in this style, and does the personnel lend itself to that? The personnel for San Diego lends itself ever so perfectly to this blended style, as I'll call it. They have a strong back line. They do concede a little more than the team sitting around them in the standings. That is maybe of their biggest weakness, because it's a brand new back line. It's a fresh 4, not the same that played together last year. But in the attack, they're really dangerous. You have Savannah McCaskill, who seems to have found a home in San Diego, bringing that NWSL style. She can be very quick on the transition, playing those balls over the top. And then you have that added element of the Dali, the Cascarino, the Leon. And I think it's just blended really well with what Jonas Idevol wants to do. And that's what it's been about. It's about fitting those puzzle pieces together and choosing to play a style that lends itself well to the personnel that you have. We finally got to talk about them, Allie. We've been wanting to do that the whole time.
We have.
I do feel like they were such an enigma for a long time. I was trying to figure out what really was clicking. And I do genuinely believe, like, finally, after watching them for so long, it has to be that. That's really what I feel like it is. It's clicking at the highest of levels like that.
And that is it for this week on the Women's Soccer Show. As ever, please remember to check out our Patreon. We put on extra content. We've got news in 10. And we will be dropping those preview episodes of the Euros early for our Patreon subscribers. So if you want to get in there a little bit early, make sure you check us out. As we said, Euros coverage starts this week. So we will be dropping episodes Mondays and Thursdays all the way through the Euros, all the way up to the final.
Starts next week.
But if you're on Patreon, it starts this week.
But if you're on Patreon, it starts this week. If you're on Patreon, it's already started. You probably already listened to Group A. All right. Thank you all. As always, we're so excited to get Euros coverage kicked off next week. So you will hear us again in your ears starting on Monday, twice a week, all the way through July. For us here at the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Ali.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.